When we look at the human brain, this is a lateral view. We have cerebrum, cerebellum, and spinal cord here. Okay, this is all central nervous system. Human brain is made of different lobes. We have frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, temporal lobe. This is cerebellum. You have between cerebellum and cerebrum, you have these fissures, these deep grooves. They have different names. For example, this one between cerebrum and cerebellum is called transverse fissure. Between temporal lobe and parietal frontal lobe, this fissure, this deep groove, is called lateral fissure. And this one is not a very deep groove. That's why it's called sulcus and not fissure. Between frontal lobe and parietal lobe, this is called central sulcus. And you have the shallow grooves, they're called sulci, and you have it all across the brain, sulci, and the meaty part in between the sulci, these raised areas, they're called gyri, sulci and gyri. We're looking at the sagittal section of human brain. Again, this part is our cerebrum, and this is our cerebellum. And transverse fissure here is also very obvious between the two parts of the brain. Inside the cerebellum, you see arbor vitae. It's kind of like tree of life. They look like tree branches. Cerebellum with arbor vitae. Here, the connection between the two brain hemispheres, we have corpus callosum, we have septum pellucidum, which is a very thin sheet. And if I poke through that sheet, it takes me to this space, which is called lateral ventricle. Lateral ventricle. It's below this septum pellucidum. And then you have fornix right here. This is thalamus. You have hypothalamus. You have pituitary gland here. This is optic chiasma. It's a cross that brings the information from right eye to the left occipital lobe and from left eye to the right occipital lobe. Optic chiasma, pituitary gland. This structure is called mammillary body. Mammillary body. You have brainstem. You have medulla oblongata. Pons is part of brainstem right here. You have medulla oblongata here. Here we are looking at these spaces that cerebrospinal fluid passes through. This space is called fourth ventricle, and fourth ventricle is connected to third ventricle through this opening, this passageway, which is called cerebral aqueduct. And we already talked about lateral ventricles here, which if I poked through the septum pellucidum, it would take me to lateral ventricle. It's marking us the gyri and also sulci. And this one's parietal lobes, occipital lobe, and frontal lobe. We're looking at the transverse section of brain. And again, this part is our cerebrum. This is in green is our cerebellum with arbor vitae, right? And here I'm looking at corpus callosum again, septum pellucidum, and fornix. This gooey structure is choroid plexus. Here I have superior colliculi number 31, inferior colliculi number 32. Collectively, there are four structures. They're called corpora quadrigemina. Here I'm looking at pituitary gland. This is pons. This is mammillary body. This is optic chiasma, hypothalamus, and thalamus. Here we are looking at human brain ventricles. Again, ventricles are a complex series of spaces within the hemisphere of brain, which produce and also house cerebrospinal fluid. So we're looking at lateral ventricle here, below septum pellucidum. We have third ventricle around the thalamus. You have cerebral aqueduct. Aqueduct of Sylvius is also cerebral aqueduct, which is connecting the third ventricle to fourth ventricle. And this is your cerebellum, and this is your cerebrum, and this is your spinal cord.